honored to have the visit of Michael Verbuchen. So welcome, Michael. Michael is one of the leaders of Value Balancing Alliance. And I learned this morning that Michael is, his doctorate is from our French school, Mannheim, so, and it's a nice coincidence. So, so thank you, Michael, for your coming, and you have the floor.
Thank you for having me. And also hello from my side. I'm very happy to be here today. And thanks for the warm welcome. I'm also very happy. I mean, yes, you mentioned there's also a strong link between the University of Mannheim and ESSEC Business School. So it's really nice to like connect on very different levels. So it's very nice. Let me share my screen so you can also see what I'm talking about. And then we can also start it. So I hope you can see the screen now. That's thumbs up, that's perfect. So brief introduction. So I'm Michael Verbuchen. I work at the Value Balancing Alliance in the methodology development. So for those who haven't heard of the Value Balancing Alliance before, we're a quite young organization. We started in 2019. Nevertheless, we really have ambitious goals to measure and to develop a standardized methodology to measure and to value environmental and also socio-economic impacts of companies. And in our setting, we also test these methodologies. So it's not just that we try to have a nice concept on paper, but we really are interested in, do our methodologies work in practice? And that's one of the core assets probably also of the Value Balancing Alliance, that we have this kind of perspective, the practitioner's perspective, to also look at the concepts and test whether it's feasible in the business processes or not. And I will come to the VBA and what we're doing in, also a bit later. And I did my PhD at the University of Mannheim, as mentioned before. So, and then I started at the VBA since I was like already working in the field of sustainability, and then I saw the chance to somehow influence how companies think about their performance and to drive the sustainability change by that. So we'll probably take a bit more than 20 minutes. I hope that's okay. But I think we have still a lot of time to also then start a discussion and to so I can also answer questions that might come up. So let me briefly introduce you to the agenda that I would now, or like the topics I would like to discuss within this short presentation. So first of all, I would like to talk about this shift or this paradigm shift within the industry, within the business environment, from the old view of profit maximization to the value optimization. And then I will talk about the impact measurement and valuation. What is it all about? That you give that I will give like a short introduction to what's the main idea of this and why are we working on that, and the transition to a new level playing field. So since there is a lot of movements currently also in this sector, so I will then briefly introduce some of that. And if you have any questions, feel free also to just already write them into the chat. We will then definitely also cover these in the discussion. So don't be afraid to already put your questions in there, so we don't lose any of those. Otherwise, if there's something urgent, also feel free to unmute yourself and then raise the question also during the presentation if you have something that you really wanted to make clear in that moment. Otherwise, we can also then just jump into discussion afterwards. So currently we can see that there's a lot of changes within the business environment. We see that in very different fields, actually. So we see that with regards to the political targets we are experiencing as companies, like the Sustainable Development Goals, already urging for large differences in how we conduct business by 2030. We have the European Green Deal and many other movements and political targets that have been published within the last years, putting a lot of pressure also on businesses to conduct more sustainable business practices. We also see that with regards to the standards and the regulation part, there's a lot of discussions currently on the EU level, for example, how companies have to disclose their sustainability activities and what kind of implications that it has for also then for when it comes to reporting, of course, and it's also always related to how do investors react to your reports, since these are like a majority of audience for this kind of information. And that's also reflected in the rise of sustainable investments. So it's a major important part now when it comes to getting liquidity or like to get capital from the market to also show that you have some sort of so how is your sustainability performance going? And you have the more like societal view on this, which is like the zeitgeist, so to say, with Fridays for Future movement and a lot of different actors now putting pressure also on the industry to have some sort of transformation. So business models are facing a general transformation and face fundamental transition at the moment. And this is also reflected when you look at the paradigm shift that comes with this. And one key concept basically that is now discussed more frequently is the double materiality. So it's not just about some sort of risk perspective anymore. So what kind of financial influence do certain environmental aspects or societal aspects have on the company's value or the financial aspects of or the financial value of a company, but it's also of on the other perspective. So what kind of value does the company have for this for the environment, for the broader society? And these two perspectives now merge into the double materiality. And there's also a third perspective, so to say, which is like always or often referred to as dependencies. So how also does the impact a company has on society or on environment also then again influence positively or negatively their financial performance or their the business value in general, how they create value in general. And that could be, as an example, if you as a company helped or are one reason that a certain community has higher skilled people, for example, in a certain area, then this also has a positive effect on your company, on your business activities, for example, since you can recruit more highly skilled employees at the end. So if like a company supports, for example, a university, but that's not like the core business, so to say. Just a short example. Nevertheless, these two perspectives also lead to the need for new measurement approaches and to better understand how, for example, this value a company adds to society and to the environment has to be measured and has to be valued, so to say. That leads me to the second part, basically, where we come to some sort of methodology where we are also heavily involved in developing this. So when we talk about companies' performance, normally we in traditional reporting with regards to the sustainability aspects, we normally just look at the input and the output perspective. So what kind of raw materials have been used, what kind of emissions have been produced during the production processes, and that's basically it when it comes to the currently it's referred to as non-financial performance of a company. And especially now with this movement and the idea of double materiality, we have to move beyond. So you have to think about what's not the output, but more like the outcome. So what kind of changes of these emissions actually occurred? So is there a change in climate patterns, or what other direct effects do we have through these outputs? And then even one step further, what does it mean for the general society? So what kind of impacts do we have as a company on human health, on the environment in general? And that's the aspect where we're looking at. And that's also referred to as this IOOI logic, or the impact pathway. And this is where we are trying to even move beyond, since it's very tricky for companies to use this kind of understanding of these impacts. So what kind of impacts do we have on the environment, for example, since it's measured in completely different units. We have like, for example, the carbon emissions are basically measured in tons of CO2 equivalents. We have also water consumption, which is normally measured in cubic meters, and so on. But it's really tricky for companies to integrate these kind of different information, these kind of different units into existing business steering processes. And therefore we advocate, or we also include this into our methodology, is the valuing of impacts in terms of monetary values. So therefore we build on existing approaches like social costs of carbon that have been around already, and some sort of testing has been done with these kind of constructs. And here we can now have some sort of unified measurement in terms of like a monetary value. And that helps also to make these impacts more comparable, since otherwise it would be tricky for like the management to decide for like, so what is worse, like to have like a certain amount of water consumed, or a certain amount of carbon emissions within our production. And you always have to consider a lot of contextual factors, or to have like experts feeding you with a lot of additional information in order to make understand so what's actually going on. And with this kind of valuation, it becomes more comparable and also more easily to understand, since the whole contextualization is also part of the valuation process. And it also becomes more compatible with the business language, since we have for now mostly strategic targets expressed in monetary values, in, for example, US dollars. And it's also just easier to like argue for certain activities in order to optimize the value creation of the company beyond just the financial creation. And to illustrate how this works, I just give you an example with regards to greenhouse gas emissions. So we actually consider the inputs and outputs that have been measured, or which are measurable also on a company level, like the GHG emissions, the carbon emissions or carbon equivalents. And within such a pathway, you conceptualize basically how this then can influence direct outcomes. That could be, for example, rising, like first of all, the increase in the concentration of GHG in the atmosphere, which then leads also to rising temperature, to the shift of certain climate patterns, and so on. And this, in the end, also reflects certain impacts on society. So we have large impacts also on how we can do agriculture. How can we, how does it influence the human health in general? And this has to be considered. And this, in our methodology, we look at country level impacts. So we look how this actually affects the individual company, since, for example, also water consumption might be not that much of a problem in Scandinavian countries, but have quite an impact on society when it comes to South African countries. And that has to be considered also when we value the impacts. And that's basically a multiplier, like the social cost of carbon, in order to have a monetary value to these kind of impacts we are causing due to GHG emissions. That's the main idea of how to come to a monetary value and to actually measure and value these impacts a company has. And we, in our methodology, we do not only consider our own operations. So we have to move beyond. We have to think about a more holistic view. So it's probably quite easy to, or easier at least, to consider your own operations. So everything that is happening within the control of your company. But you also have to think about the social and environmental impacts happening upstream. So everything that is related to your suppliers, as well as downstream, since for some industries, especially upstream or downstream impacts are quite important and have to be considered as well. That could be, for example, the car industry, where most of the GHG emissions do not happen during the production process, but during the use phase of the product. And since you have to consider these aspects as well, we, in our methodology, also consider that across the whole value chain. That's the general idea of the methodology and the general idea of how to assess the value creation for society in general. We as VEBA, and when I talk about the VEBA, I talk about more than 20 member companies working in very different industries and coming from different countries, including also the big four audit companies working with us as pro bono consultants. We try to shape the field of sustainability accounting and business steering, so to say, in a way that this has to be considered by all the companies, and also within what is important for reporting lately. We do not just do this by our own. So, of course, we have a lot of exchange also within the companies, but we have also cooperation with other international organizations like the OECD. We also are heavily involved in discussions with the EU Commission, for example, and since there is also a lot of discussion on how the regulation has to be done, this is definitely an important aspect. And we also have a lot of strategic partnerships, like with the Capitals Coalition, or also when it comes to methodology development. We lately also joined forces together with Harvard Business School, since they also work on similar aspects, such as the impact-weighted accounts, which is also a form of valuing impacts with regards to monetary values. And within the VEBA, we have 3 work streams. So the first one would be the methodology development, and that's basically what I have outlined before, where we try to find a standardized way how we can assess and value the sustainability performance of companies. So the environmental and the socio-economic aspects of their performance. The second pillar is about the feasibility of these approaches. So it's all about considering the practitioner's voice here. Everything looks nice on paper, but when it comes to really applying these concepts and the methodology, there's a lot of challenges maybe that might relate to this kind of that might relate to the methodology, and where we have to be critically reviewing also these kind of aspects, and also want to understand how this actually can influence decision-making processes. And third field, or the third area, is then co-developing the level playing field. So also sharing our insight that we generate through these processes with regulators and standard setters in order to co-create this new level playing field. So basically shaping the future of accounting and business steering. And in the first pillar, we developed this kind of methodological framework. And everything I've shown you with regards to the methodology refers to this value to society. So it's basically an answer on to the double materiality I've shown you in the beginning. And we have 2 different work streams within the methodology development. The one is the value to society. So where we really want to understand the impacts we have as a company on society and the environment. And on the other hand, we look at the dependencies. So to better understand how these kind of consequences and these impacts on society and environment actually then also can be linked back to the value to business, thereby answering to both of these perspectives of the double materiality. And then we have this piloting, and this has been done once so far. So normally we have some sort of iterations. First, we have some sort of methodology development. Then companies have to apply these kind of methods. And then we have some sort of learning circle and use the kind of feedback also from the company perspective, then also to improve also the methodology which has been developed before. And this has been done previously by 11 countries from 7 industries, and we have incorporated 183 sub-indicators combined to 9 indicators. Now it's even more. And the own operations and also upstream have been considered so far. And of course, also different geographical regions have been considered here. And this kind of piloting leads to a better understanding of the company's footprint when it comes to the positive and negative effects of a business impact. So not only considering the economic or the financial aspects, but also looking at the impacts a company has on environment, on the society. And here you can see that not only the direct effects, so meaning the own operations, but also upstream has been considered so far. With, for example, the GHG emissions, air pollutions, meaning other air pollutions than the GHG emissions, like some sort of toxic air emissions. Also water consumption and pollution have been considered, or the land use and waste, of course, but also aspects like training or occupational health and safety, here mentioned as incidents, basically. And it also leads to a very useful tool. So why are companies doing this? Not just for fun. It's not that they just love these charts and they're like, okay, yeah, then let's just calculate these and put a lot of effort into this just to have a nice slide. But it's also relevant for the decision making, since they now can, with like having just one monetary unit to express all the different impacts, you can start using different scenarios also to make better decisions, and to also, for example, make strategic decisions, such as on the feedstock, to compare more renewable or more conventional resources that will be considered within the production. And you can then look at how does this actually change your overall value contribution or your overall performance. And then you have a more holistic view when it comes to the decision making. And another benefit is, since we are also looking at the country level, to look at the country by country footprint, since some of these benefits to society occur in different locations. In this example, in the US, Germany, and also in China, but the costs for society might appear in different locations. So when you look at water pollution or water consumption, for example, these could heavily influence society within one country. And in order to better also understand the company's footprint on a country level, you can then map the benefits and the costs also on country level to adjust your country-specific strategies and goals. And the last but not least important aspect is to help co-creating now this new level playing field. So we have the methodology development. We've seen now the piloting, why it's important, but now it's also important to understand, so how are we actually helping to create or to co-create this new level playing field? And we as VBA understand ourselves as the practitioner's voice in this process of standardization. Currently, there's a lot of initiatives, a lot of organizations also providing very different guidelines, partially contradicting themselves with regards to what they request from companies. And currently we can see that there's a lot of consolidation going on. So more and more organizations merge or at least join their efforts in order to have a more harmonized way of how companies' performance, sustainability performance also should be considered. And especially on the European level, we are involved in very different projects where it comes to the natural capital accounting, which also feeds into new directives such as the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. We are also involved in the EU platform for sustainable finance and other aspects. So trying to also keep on going the discussion on to look at impacts of a company, not just simple outputs as it has been considered before in reporting, and also to think about ways to harmonize the different units of impacts in order to have a more coherent understanding and a more like a comparability of these different impacts through monetary valuation. And this is basically our work, and this is how we try to support the whole development in making companies more sustainable, and also to help the overall perception of social performance of companies, or the not only the social but the sustainability performance of companies. And thereby I would like to conclude and would be happy to engage in a lively discussion.
So thank you a lot, Michael. Please, participants, please feel free to ask your questions.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So sometimes there are certain impacts which are not quantifiable, mostly when they are social impact or something like that. So what is the room for accounting them?
So it's a very good question. So as you also have seen in this one slide, we're currently not considering all the social aspects that could be considered when it comes to the social impacts of a company. I would argue that even for qualitative social impacts, you have some sort of metric to at least have a brief or like a better understanding of what is the overall social impact of a company. It might be not 100% accurate, that's for sure. And our methodology is also still in development, and we are trying to also, for this reason, collaborate with, for example, our partners from the Harvard Business School, the Impact-Weighted Accounts Initiative, to get a better understanding also of qualitative aspects and how we can somehow also consider these in terms of quantifying them, since it should be a help for business steering, first of all. That's our understanding, to have a more holistic understanding of our impacts as a company. And therefore, yeah, we're definitely discussing a lot of different social impacts also, and how to include them in a more quantitative way. But it's definitely a hard discussion, and probably it will take more years also to come to have covered the most important social impacts, which have been expressed so far more in a qualitative way.
There's a raised hand.
Yes, I get it. Thank
yes.
you.
So there was also, there's another question. I think someone raised the hands.
Please, there's a raised hand, yes.
Hello? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Oh, we can hear you, hopefully.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your nice speech. And I have a question on the compliance. As you just explained about the here in current stage is more qualitative other than the quantitative, but we are toward that direction to build a system or build a methodology to make it more quantitative. But I would like to ask, what about the compliance, this part?
In what way? Could you maybe try to explain more on the compliance perspective? So what exactly would be?
For example, if a company who is in its practice, the company just say that he shoulder their social responsibility and have this kind of social impact, and how we measure it, how we use the qualitative way to examine whether it's true or not, and whether it will follow the social guidance or even the law.
So yeah, I mean, that's also a question related to transparency, basically, right? And also to make it more understandable how these kind of impacts have been calculated, and how the monetary value was calculated in general. And this is why we advocate for a very standardized approach in order to value our impacts. And this is something where we want to try also to make this clear within the discussions with standard setters and so on, that we have to have like a unified way of how we can come up with a monetary value for certain impacts, so that this can be also then audited, and in a way that there is some sort of standardized processes behind this. I hope this answers the general idea of the question.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. The standardized and the universal way. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Michael, there's a question in the chat.
There's also a question in the chat. Let me check. It's about the best score if so let me quickly check. It's not really like they are so when it comes to, I wouldn't call it score since it's not a ranking that we're producing. It's just trying to express the sustainability performance of a company in general. And when it comes especially to how companies can benefit and can also increase their value, it's definitely then when it comes to the decision-making processes, for example, I have shown you before. That's probably something that can be very helpful, especially when you want to optimize your overall value. And I don't know whether you mean the current financial value, the business value, or the overall value contribution of the company by in your question. Maybe you can also elaborate on that.
Excuse me, can you repeat what you said? Because I don't have a very good internet connection.
Sorry, once again? Yeah,
my internet connection is not very good. So can you repeat what you have just asked, please?
Yeah, sure. So I think the idea behind this question is, so how does it actually help to like increase the value of the company, right?
Yeah, sure. Well, my question is like, do you have a concrete example with a real company who really benefits from what you've said? You know, because you said to us, you're talking to them, you're making discussions with those companies. So maybe you have a real example.
Yeah. So actually, this is all these the results that I've shown you, not only the decision making, but also the this overall footprint. These are actually results of one of the member companies. So they actually have to report these results to us, and they apply the method already. It's not that we're just having the discussion, but it's actually really about having these kinds of methods tested. And here, the company actually wanted to understand, so if we want to switch to more renewable production in terms of the feedstock, so what would actually be changed and how could that actually influence the overall value contribution of the company? And therefore, we have this kind of scenario approach where you just compare the current status, so to say, with a more renewable feedstock and how that could then change or lead to a certain change in the individual sustainability topics, for example, the GHG emissions and so on. So that's actually the most important part of the methodology. So what kind of influence do we have on business steering, right? So it's actually the main idea behind this, to optimize your value creation, but not just for your business value, but the overall value you contribute to society as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, but I'm not able to disclose which company this was, so I'm sorry.
No,
I cannot like say, oh, well, that's company X, Y, that, but that's a real case. Any other questions?
Please, follow. Don't hesitate. May I pose a question, Michael? Maybe the time. So this guideline, this model is more related to decision making. So it's the audience are mainly company managers.
It's currently more related to the business steering process and decision making. Yes, that's true. But of course, it also has implications for the disclosure of information. And that's now also a recent a topic that we are discussing within the VBA to think about. So what would be required, and also to understand the holistic value contribution of a company with regards to the disclosure. So what is actually needed within reporting in order to make it more visible what the overall value contribution to society would actually mean.
Joe, you have a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Joe? Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead, please.
On the last slide, I didn't understand why the weather was so low.
The weather.
Sorry, this one?
Yeah, that one.
And what was it exactly what you were like not sure about?
No, nothing. Okay, sorry, yeah. Okay. That's fine, it's fine. Now I understand it.
Okay.
Okay. Please, do you have any further questions? Yes, Marco.
Yes, can we have some examples of sustainability projects that are more specific examples?
With regard to activities that have been assessed, or in terms of the impact, or with regard to activities that have been considered after the impact assessment as part of the decision making, or can you explain that in a bit more detail?
Yes, thank you.
No, I mean, would you like to have like an example of what kind of decisions have been derived from the impact valuation, or what kind of examples could be also used to conduct impact valuation? I'm not sure which example.
Yeah, maybe more the second one.
So it's important to understand that we are not looking at certain business activities. So we do not look at, for example, that a company is also quite active in regards to corporate social responsibility activities, but for example, like corporate volunteering or other activities that benefit society in general, or that are considered as corporate citizenship. And then that could be one way to evaluate something, what's the overall contribution to society through that. But we're looking at the organization in general. So the overall business activities, considering not like one specific activity here. That's normally not happening. So it's more like, okay, what kind of, we can see that in certain industries, of course, we have different impacts. I mean, especially when it comes to the chemical industry, water consumption is definitely more of an issue than for companies which are more like service providers, for example. But we do not go on like an activity level when it comes to the evaluation or the assessment of the impacts. It's more like the overall perspective of the company.
Thank you.
Maybe, Michael, something you mentioned about impacts country by country. This possibly you don't have information at this level, at this point, sorry. But I think this is a very promising issue to explore how companies impact more or less here and there. I think it's quite
I think someone
promising.
shared their phone.
Yes. Sorry?
I think someone shares the
Yes.
What's
phone.
happening?
Somebody sharing.
screen
his
black.
or her screen. Anirudh, you are sharing your screen. I don't know if you want to show something. Okay. Oops. Share. Hello.
So
Hello.
here
Okay.
we go. Where have we been? Sorry, you also asked another question on the country by country footprint.
Yes, I think this is very promising, because I imagine now you don't have much information, but I think at some moment it might be interesting to explore how companies impact more or less here or there.
So yeah, I completely agree. Once again, maybe I'm not sure who's sharing the screen, but
Okay.
yeah, but in general, I think this is like an important part of the business steering, actually, to look at the country by country footprint of the corporate performance. Since this also starts a discussion on, so it's like the contribution to society and the environment equally distributed through the countries the company is operating in. And that's something very important to consider when it comes to business steering, right? Therefore, this is why we're also advocating to look at the country level in order to make that kind of business steering happen.
Thank you, Michael. I don't know if there's one question more for Dr. Verbuchen.
I just have a doubt.
Yes.
Yeah, so the chart that you showed about how the accounting standards go through OECD and then IFRS and how the green financing works. So in that chart, there were natural financial principles, or basically like standards to evaluate the natural capital, right? They were positioned somewhere. And so I want to ask that, are they also accepted by the IFRS, which sets the accounting standards, or they're not yet under the IFRS? So how is it?
A very good question. So the project that was displayed on that slide was related to the EU directive on corporate
Fuck you over the class. The class is trying to end. Fuck you, the class. Fuck you, the class. Fuck you over the class. Fuck you all of them. Michael, bitch.
So when it comes to the IFRS,
Michael, bitch.
Bro, can you leave the meet? There are people trying to listen, so please stop.
Okay. Okay, things should be fine by now. Okay.
Yeah. So when it comes to the IFRS, that's a different thing. Yeah, that's true. So this part is more going to the EU level at the moment. But also there, it's like one of the major, the major players when it comes to the reporting, since everything that is somehow related to the EU market has to also then follow this kind of aspects. And we are also heavily involved in the discussion with the IFRS, or also the ISSB, which is now focusing on the standards when it comes to the sustainability performance of companies. So that's also part of the discussion, but it's like two different work streams, so to say. So, like the difference here.
What happens here? Please.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aditi. Well, so thank you, Michael, for your time. Thank you for your visit.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you for having accompanied us. Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot.
Have a good afternoon. Sorry.
Thank you.
And a good weekend.
Thank you. So, and to my class, well, this is the closing of the course. I'm happy that we get till this moment. And well, if I don't see you, well, I hope that we close everything well in the course and we have a nice Christmas holiday. So
thank you very much, Michael and Professor.
See you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Sir,
Bye.
Mr. Zikari,
Yes.
I have a question for you regarding the course.
Yes.
I remember in the first hangout, I took notes that there was 10% on participation.
Yes.
However, I was wondering how that was graded.
Well, I think it's explained, but we have 3 activities. One is this one, okay?
Yeah.
Then you have the forum, and the forum I usually put some comments. And it's something everybody can engage with the comments. And then you have the. If you are talking about the Gran École, we have the simulation, the business ethics simulation. Not for the VEBA, but for the Gran École, we have the simulation. Okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you to you.
Yeah, Professor. Sorry.
Please. Yes. Who's speaking? Hello. Hello. Yes.
Hello. Nice to meet you. As that for the 4 hangouts, actually I only have the opportunity to participate in 2. The
Yes.
first is because the first section is because that all Singapore students cannot participate. I think you remember. And for the third hangout is because I have a class schedule, my business English debate,
don't worry,
and I have
don't worry.
No worry. Okay.
No, the point here is that you try to participate as much as we can. Here the problem is somebody that never takes part, or this is an issue, but it's not your case, of course.
Yeah, thank you. I have gained some insights in this hangout. Thank you.
Thank you to you. Thank you.
Bye. See you soon.
Bye. See you.
Thank you, sir. Have the rest of a good day.
Thank you.